We are recording. Congratulations. Here is our first blab. Welcome, everyone. We are talking today about two FAFSAs, 1 year, 2016, and what does that mean for parents and families? And today we have Mark from eAdvisors, and we have Ben Cole, and we are going to be kind of maybe talking about the questions that most consumers might have, parents, students. We're going to address those first, and then what do you guys think about maybe the last half hour or 15 minutes? We invite people to sit in the seats and ask their specific questions, and if we can, we can. If we can't, we can just see what consumers are wondering. How about that?
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
All right, Mark, why don't you give a little bit of 2 sentences about yourself, and then Ben, you'll go.
I am a Senior Vice President and publisher of advisors.com, a free website about planning and paying for college. I'm also the author of several best-selling books about paying for college, including Filing the FAFSA, and most recently, Twisdoms about paying for college.
Perfect. And Ben?
My name is Ben Cole. I worked in the financial aid industry at a 4-year research institution for higher ed. And I now work with faculty and administrators to help them improve teaching and learning in higher ed for a nonprofit organization. My business is called Kaleidoscope, my own business, and KOHL, Idoscope. And my tagline is enlightening the college experience. So I'm taking the knowledge and skills that I learned working in higher education and helping families and students prepare academically and financially for the college experience.
Perfect, Ben. Great. And those of you who don't know me, I'm Jody Oken. I am the CEO of College Financial Aid Advisors. I run the #chat College Cash, and I used to be a financial aid consultant at Occidental and Pitzer College. So I worked at both of those universities. And so we're coming here today to talk about, as I said, 2 FAFSAs, 1 year, 2016. And I'm going to start with Mark and say, on the record, congratulations. This happened, your proposal in 1996. Take it away.
Yeah.
I first proposed that we have prior year, where you use 2-year-old data instead of 1-year-old data for filing the FAFSA in late 1996, soon after I delivered a prototype implementation of an online FAFSA to the U.S. Department of Education. Back in 1996, it was all on paper, and starting in 1997-98, it was online, and it grew from there until today. More than 99% of all FAFSAs are online.
And when you and I and Ben talk about prior year, I think it makes sense in our heads because we've been in financial aid for a long time and we understand what that means. But what does that mean for an incoming a student who's a senior in high school right now, who's applying to their colleges right now, working really hard on their admission application? What does that mean for them going forward?
And so a student who is applying for financial aid right now for the 2016-2017 academic year, actually right now it would be 2015-2017 if they're starting in the fall. We're kind of in that limbo state where it could be potentially 2 different years depending on which year you're going to be enrolling. But let's say you're going to start college in the fall, you're filing the FAFSA now. The academic year is 2015-16. The prior tax year is 2014, last year. And then the prior year would be 2013. So what we're doing is we're using the previous tax year under the current system as a proxy for your income during the academic year.
Right.
It's to estimate your need during that year. What this proposal does is it shifts from last tax year to the year before that, because the tax returns will have already been filed. And so you don't have this kind of race condition between you have to file the FAFSA as soon as possible after January 1st, but not before January 1st because it's the prior tax year. And most people don't file their federal income tax returns until after they file the FAFSA. So it's adds a lot of complexity, whereas using 2-year-old data, means that everybody will be able to use their actual federal income tax return, streamlining the entire process.
Okay, so Ben, what can you add to that?
Well, what I think, and I didn't even know that Mark introduced this idea so long ago, but I remember being in the financial aid industry just hoping for this, because I think in our minds we thought this is pure alignment. It finally aligns the admissions process and the financial aid process together for students and families. Because we, in the financial aid industry, we always thought it was so confusing that students at the beginning or maybe in the summer and beginning of the academic year, they were applying, they were filling out their scholarship application for colleges and universities, they were applying for housing, they were applying for admission, and really not knowing a whole lot about the full cost of attendance or what they might be able to get in grants and loans and scholarships from the university until maybe even April, maybe 6 months later. So
right.
Finally, we are able to align those two very important procedures for students and families into one solid process. Like Mark was saying, with what we're talking about today, with the two FAFSAs in 1 year, to me, the students who are planning on attending or looking at colleges and universities to attend for next fall, which would be fall 2016, they will go through the normal process like they always have, with just like other students, and they'll complete the FAFSA for the 16-17 year using this year that we're in right now, this year's 2015 calendar year tax information. But then they'll turn right around, and shortly after that, nearly when they begin their semester, they'll apply again for the FAFSA. So for this upcoming class, hey, Yolanda's here. All right.
I'm having so much technical difficulty over here. Yay!
Make sure that you have all your other windows closed, so you only have one Blab window open, and
now I know.
Okay, perfect.
So for this class, it will be confusing, but after this class, the class thereafter, I think the process will align nearly perfectly, and we'll be on a real good track from here on out, and really effectively be able to help families prepare at one time of the year.
Okay, so
the 2015 tax data is going to be used for two different FAFSA years. One is this upcoming 2016-17 FAFSA cycle, and then with the switch to the prior year, the 2017-2018, will also use the same 2015 tax year data.
Yeah, that's important to understand, yes.
So my question to the panel would be, my next question would be, so let's say we tell parents in 2016, FAFSA, I don't know what that was. The FAFSA is going live on October 1st. Does that mean, remember how we have this whole scenario of first in, you have to fill it on January 1st, like
right.
First in. What is that? I mean, does that conversation even still apply anymore? Because, go ahead, anybody who's got someone has a window open that's, I don't know if it's me or there's feedback.
It's not me.
I think that the new FAFSA process, and we still have to tell students that you can't file before October 1st, and we should encourage them to file it as soon as possible. But given that the states and the colleges tend to have January, February, and March deadlines, if they file it in October, they'll be ahead of those deadlines. Still, people who file it sooner tend to receive more grant money than people who file it later. So it's worth emphasizing that you need to get this done. The nice thing is it'll be the same start date as the CSS financial aid profile form, so we won't have to juggle two different dates.
Right. And the other thing that I kind of like about it, I mean, the state dates are staying the same. So I think we should sort of stress that, right? This is a federal position, right? So if you're applying for, let's say, California, a Cal grant, or state grants, those dates for right now are staying the same. Is that true or not true, what I'm saying?
The state deadlines are remaining unchanged. I doubt the states will move the dates earlier.
Okay, someone, Yolanda, what's going on in your house? Nothing?
What are y'all hearing?
We're hearing like trains and playing and stuff like that.
No planes here.
It sounds like a vacuum. Sounds like someone's vacuuming.
Yeah, I have nothing open, so okay, we'll keep it for a little while. So let's try.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Just let me know if you have to kick me off.
Okay.
Train.
I think we're okay now. We'll go for a little bit. Go ahead, Mark.
So another aspect of the FAFSA filing dates is that low-income students tend to file the FAFSA later than the middle and high-income students. The high-income students, they all get it done January 1st. The low-income students, they might take a few months to get started. So by having an earlier date that's at the start of the season, we may have more low-income students filing it sooner and therefore benefiting from the aid that may enable them to enroll in college, or if they already are enrolling in college, but they were, say, thinking that they could work their way through college. But students who work a full-time job while in college are half as likely to graduate as students who work 12 hours or less a week. So by getting them to get the financial aid, they may work less and therefore be more likely to graduate. And so this potentially will increase graduation rates by low-income students.
Which is great. Yolanda you had a good question that a parent asked, or some of your families had asked you this morning. You want to pose it to the group?
Remind me what I said, Jody.
Asked about award years and whether they would get full work study or.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so for the student, talked to a couple of my students, because as soon as this information came out, I sent it to a couple of my students that are currently in college. So one of the questions they were asking was, how does this affect me as a work-study student? If I'm filing in January and now I'm filing in October, what does that mean for me as far as continuing my work study? Because again, they're used to that January cycle, right? That they're filing, and now I'm filing twice. What does this do, if it does anything, to the money that I'm receiving as a work study student?
Doesn't do anything. You still have your financial aid based on the academic year, the award year, which runs from July 1st to June 30th. All this is doing is changing the data upon which your eligibility is determined from the prior tax year to the tax year before that. It's not going to change anything other than how they calculate your eligibility, but most people have stable income from one year to the next, so it shouldn't make much of a change. Now, an interesting question that I've heard recently is for 2017-18, it's going to be using 2015 tax data. What if your income in 2016 went down? Can you substitute 2016 data? Well, the U.S. Department of Education hasn't yet figured that out. I think the most likely scenario is, remember, this is using income data from the prior year or the prior year as a proxy for the award year. So it'll still be the same kind of appeals process if you've had a significant reduction in your income, but rather than substituting the 2016 actual data, they will do what they currently do, which is an estimate of 2017 income and tax data. So if you have volatility where you went from high income in 2015 to low income in 2016, and it continues, well, then you're going to get more aid. If you bounce back up and your income in 2017 will be similar to 2015, then you're probably not going to get a change in aid. Now, if you normally have volatile income, like you're a small business owner, you own a pizza shop, or you're a taxi driver, and your income from one year to the next goes up or down, what they might do is what they currently do, which is ask for several years of income tax returns and do an average to smooth out that volatility.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So what about, Ben, I saw you writing quickly. Did you have a question on that?
Yeah. I'm writing down a couple things that as someone who managed federal aid programs for over a decade, one of the first questions I had in my mind was the FISAP. And right now, federal aid directors at Title IV institutions are completing their FISAP to submit that information to the federal government to let them know how they spent their money, what kind of funding they have, what kind of funding they need, et cetera. So my question is, how will this now affect when institutions will know the amount of funding they have, for instance, in their work-study funding program or their supplemental educational opportunity grant or whatever they receive from the federal government? Will the knowledge of the funding they have be given to them earlier than it has in the past?
I don't know, Mark.
Yeah, it's an unknown. The U.S. Department of Education has not yet figured that out. Worst case scenario, it stays the same. But the potential here is that maybe colleges will get data earlier, and perhaps they can put out the IPEDS data, which is the Institutional Post-Secondary Education Data System. It's what's behind tools like College Navigator that students can use to get information about individual colleges. Right now, it's updated in December, which is after most students would be using it. So it's
right.
2-year-old data. Maybe by pushing everything up by 3 months, it'll be updated in September, October. And so when students are starting to search for colleges, it'll be, instead of 2-year-old data, it'll be 1-year-old data. So it's kind of interesting that there's switching to 2-year-old data may enable an earlier update so that we have 1-year-old data for students choosing their colleges.
Yeah, it is ironic, but I think the federal government will have to allow institutions to know ahead of time, way ahead of time, maybe 6 months ahead of time, what they can offer in aid.
Yeah. I'd like to invite anyone into a seat, so go ahead and press the plus button and join us in the conversation. I had a few more questions. So I'm the kind of girl who likes to sort of imagine what a family's going through in their household. So let's just put a scenario out there where we're saying, okay, the high school student is applying for college right now. Let's say it's 2 years from today, and they're applying, they're filling out their Common App. They're then going to fill out their CSS profile because let's say they're going to some private school that requires it. They're then going to move on to the weekend because this has lasted forever, and they're going to fill out their FAFSA because it became live October 1st, and they went regular decision to all 10 of their schools that they're going to. So now that family in March, as we know it is today, in March, they will receive 10 yeses or nos to go to college, and hopefully they will also at the same time have coupling. They will receive their award letter at the same time. Is that what we're saying here?
Absolutely. And it'll basically be the same process. It's just you can apply for aid a little bit earlier and use your actual tax data. So the form becomes dynamically shorter. Since you don't need to supply your income information, you don't need to supply your tax information. It's copied directly from your federal income tax return.
And sorry, Ben, I'm like the question. I'm the question girl right now. Please, anyone join us. Press the plus button. We'd love to have you in the conversation. 2 FAFSAs, 2016. And thank you all for coming to the Blab. I think this is great information that we can get out there. Tell a bird, give a little high fives to Mark and Ben and myself, and tell your friends this is what we're talking about. We want to get it straight for families. So I have the fact sheet sort of sitting on my desk here that I was just reading through, and they were stating that in the fact sheet from the White House that hopefully this will, like you were saying, Mark, get more students applying. I think that was important, getting them applying early. And what other kind of transparency? The scorecard. The scorecard is another piece of transparency. Anyone look at that? I took a look at it. Did you guys look at it? What do you think?
Yeah, it's adding new data to what's currently available through iPads. So they haven't yet integrated it into College Navigator. There's a separate college scorecard website that gives you the information. It's got some interesting information like what is the earnings, average and median earnings of people 10 years after they first enter college. What is the average federal debt of the college graduates? And there's actually a lot more data behind the scenes than is exposed in the interface. And the neat thing about iPads, it's an acronym that most people aren't familiar with, but that data,
go ahead and tell us what it is.
It's the Institutional Post-Secondary Education Data System.
Okay.
It's a collection of data supplied by colleges about financial aid and other characteristics like test scores. It is the source of most of these college search tools that you find online in the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hearing an echo.
Yeah, I'm hearing an echo, Yolanda. I don't know if that's still you echoing.
Well, it started when
Okay,
she
guys,
she
looks
appeared.
like there's
But
Okay, bye.
anyway, this addition of government verified data to iPads means that all these various college search tools are going to have a lot more data available, and they're going to use that in creative ways to maybe calculate which college has the greatest return on investment
Right.
based on comparing your debt to your income. The main limitation right now is that it doesn't have student level data, it doesn't have program level data, it's just
Right.
institutional level at the college as a whole. So you don't know if a college, it's because the college has more engineering students than humanities students that it performs better. But the Department of Education says they're working on adding program level data, and that it will come in a year or two, which will make it even better. But I think this is a big step forward. It's a lot better than what they had originally proposed, which had a lot of flaws, but they're adding a lot of good value through the college scorecard.
Ben, have you looked at it, the college scorecard?
Yeah, I have, and I agree with what Mark's saying about it. It seems to me that the federal government is, in a sense, pushing the ROI discussion a little bit, and families. And I don't think it's a bad thing at all, really. I think families need to make better financial decisions about what I consider to be their greatest investment, besides maybe a mortgage, and that's the investment in their children in higher education. So I think it is and will provide better information for families, consumer information, to make better decisions on where they want to attend and what might be worth their dollar, to give them a better idea of if they go to a certain institution, will they come out and be able to have good job placement and then a good salary for the return on their investment in their higher educational experience. I wanted to maybe bring up what, I don't know if we've talked about this yet, the IRS data retrieval tool.
Oh my gosh, that was on my notes too, and I keep forgetting it, so I just wrote it down. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And, I mean, that was huge for the people in financial aid because it allowed families to simply move their information from their taxes and their 1040 forms into the FAFSA. So I'm assuming that will still happen again with this new system. I haven't read a whole lot about that, but it's a little bit off topic from the scorecard. But
I
it does.
think it's relevant.
And it is going to occur, but instead of becoming available the first Sunday in February, it'll become available at the start of the FAFSA season on October 1st, so
Good.
that you'll immediately be able to use it to fill out the FAFSA instead of having to wait until after you file your tax returns to update the FAFSA that you based on estimated information. So this is going to save people a lot of time, not just at the filling out the initial FAFSA, but also in the verification process, because any information that comes directly from your federal income tax return does not need to be verified. That's going to save a lot of families and a lot of schools a lot of time and effort.
Yeah.
And it's also another way in which this entire process will enable more people to get financial aid, because sometimes people just get stopped cold by the verification process. They're asked for documentation of a piece of information from their FAFSA,
Right.
and they can't get that. Maybe they can't get their tax transcript because the IRS tax get a transcript tool was taken off the web. And
Right.
maybe their parents may live overseas and not be able to get the forms and then send in those forms in a timely fashion. So this is going to vastly improve the verification process and reducing the burden on families and colleges.
Right, and I'm going to reiterate what you're saying sort of in story form. So I find that verification process is where it dumps off. So we hear a lot about filling out the FAFSA, and we don't hear about colleges really verifying, and they need a lot of verification. There's a lot of paperwork to finish till this family gets their final award letter, till they get their bill, and if they are eligible for financial aid. So if I'm hearing you correct, Mark, I would say that a family would then on October 1st fill out their FAFSA. They would then be able to link to the IRS tool right then and there. We don't know the exact particulars. They'll be able to draw in their current tax year data into the FAFSA. Their FAFSA would then be verified and sent off into the college. Is that how we would imagine?
Well, the tax information doesn't need to be verified because it's coming from the IRS, and so long as you don't change that information,
right,
it's going to be flagged as having come unmodified from the IRS. And anything that comes from the IRS unmodified is not subject to verification.
Right.
So that includes your taxes paid, that includes your adjusted gross income.
Right.
About 10, 11 data elements on the FAFSA come directly from the IRS.
Right.
And so instead of about a third of the FAFSAs being selected for verification, we may see a significant reduction in the number that are selected for verification, because you will no longer have, most people, the taxes and income information needing to be verified.
So then that tool may change in essence, is what you're saying. I mean, because you're just, right now you're pulling the information from the IRS. You're still going to be self-populating the student is still going to self-populate the FAFSA, correct?
That's correct, because the IRS doesn't want to directly transfer the data to the
Right.
U.S. Department of Education. So you pop up a window that's actually on the IRS website
Right.
that populates the form with your data.
Right.
With the opportunity to change it, which you shouldn't do unless
Right,
there's
of
a
course.
significant reason. And then you are the one who pushes the button that says, transfer this data to the U.S. Department of Education.
Right.
The IRS is very, very cautious about itself releasing data. It
Yeah.
wants the taxpayer to be the one who releases the data.
Yeah. Did that answer your question, Ben, about IRS? That was definitely on the top of my mind too.
Yeah, and I just wanted to bring that up because it really is a good tool, and we just need to encourage families to utilize that. And I hope that it aligns with the new prior year process as well. The other thing I thought about thinking about this prior year process is how professional judgment for institutions might change. And when I say professional judgment, since some are listening that may not understand what that is, professional judgment is the ability for financial aid administrators to make adjustments or require additional information from families to perhaps help them in the financial aid process. So if families submit a FAFSA and then maybe they experienced something, maybe they experienced maybe a car wreck after they completed the FAFSA, or the family lost income, or maybe there was a divorce with the parents, that will allow the families and the students to submit information to the institution in order to, I guess, maybe possibly adjust their financial aid that were offered. Since now, in the future, financial aid will be offered nearly a full year before the students arrive at the institution. That might make more opportunities for professional judgment to occur. So I just wanted to open that up for discussion.
Well, and professional judgment is trying to take into account anything that has changed since the year in which you're basing the data. So the income information is going to be 2 years old. The asset information will be current as of the date the FAFSA is filed. Both are attempting to predict ability to pay during the academic year. So anything that in that prior tax year that is different this year. So if you've had a change in income, job loss, death of a wage earner, also anything that sets you apart from the typical family, like you have high unreimbursed medical and dental expenses, or you have high dependent care costs for a special needs child or an elderly parent. That is grounds for a financial aid appeal or professional judgment review The colleges will then evaluate that in the context, remembering that the goal is to evaluate ability to pay during the academic year.
Right.
And so if there's anything there, just like the current process comparing 1-year-old data, this will be comparing 2-year-old data.
Mm-hmm.
Now, another set of changes that I do expect to occur is that right now there is something called College Goals Sunday. Their website is collegegoalsundayusa.org, that is run by the National College Access Network, where in January, February, and March, you can get one-on-one help completing the FAFSA from financial aid counselors and other professionals who volunteer their time in evenings and weekends during those months. Well, they are obviously going to have to move that forward to October, November, December instead of January, February, and March.
Right. And that's going to be crunchy. I mean, for short window application schools, but I think that's good. Absolutely, 100%. What about, should we touch on the subject about the FAFSA getting shorter, not getting shorter, 20 questions being removed, 30 questions? Anybody up for it?
Sure.
Okay.
President Obama has proposed that Congress eliminate 30 questions from the 108 question form.
Right.
So that's eliminating about a quarter of the questions.
Right.
I think it's a step in the right direction, but it's not enough because it's still a fairly complicated form. Right. Even with IRS data retrieval tool and skip logic built into the online form. What we really need to do is fit this on the back of a postcard so that there's just a handful of questions you are asked besides just your name and address and other contact information.
Right.
This is the only means-tested federal benefit program that doesn't involve a simple comparison with a multiple of the poverty line for your family size. For example, the free and reduced price school lunch has 2 thresholds. If your income is less than 185% of the poverty line, you get a reduced price school lunch. If your income is below 130% of the poverty line, you get a free school lunch. And there are a lot of other programs like food stamps, now known as SNAP, TANF, WIC, that SSI, that all are based on comparison with the poverty line. So why do we need a 108 question form to determine eligibility for the federal Pell Grant? It doesn't make sense. Every time you add a question to the form, it adds a barrier to students, low-income students, being able to access and complete a higher education. So we really need to think about what is the essence, and that's just poverty line, which includes where you live and your family size. Maybe also the number of children in college, because just because you have 2 or 3 children in college at the same time doesn't mean you have 2 or 3 times as much money available to pay for their education. But aside from that, I don't see a need for most of the other questions that are on the FAFSA. This gets you most of the way. And the key here is we need to focus on enabling low-income students to pursue a college education and stop focusing on the less than 1% of wealthy students who can manipulate their assets and income to make themselves look poor for the form. So what if a few people get more aid than they quote unquote deserve? On the whole, the process will work better and we'll see more low-income students graduating with college degrees. And this will pay for itself because people who have a college degree, a bachelor's degree or better, tend to pay more than double the federal income tax of people who have just a high school diploma because they have, on average, higher incomes. So the federal government, the payback period for increasing federal student aid is about 10 years. Most people work for 40 years. So that's 30 years of pure profit to the federal government. It's the equivalent of a 15% annual return on investment. There is no better investment the federal government can make.
Yeah, so that all good information. Ben, where do you see the smaller FAFSA, shall we say, postcard size? About on average, families are filling it out. What's it taking them? 45 minutes to fill it out, depending on how savvy they are. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of making it more simple, and I've been predicting for quite some time that I still predict, I think within the next even 2 to 3 years, we may not even have a FAFSA. I know that's a bold statement, but we're to the point now.
Right here on Blab, he says it.
Yeah. We're almost to the point with the IRS data retrieval tool, with the IRS communicating directly, or at least the families allowing the IRS to communicate directly with the U.S. Department of Education and having the information there. The limits now of verification. Now with this new move of the prior year, we almost are to the point where the federal government, combined with the IPES data and what institutions provide for data management, we're almost to the point where students can really, in a sense, submit to the federal government which institution they want to attend, and that institution then is notified of that student's interest and sends that family the award notification. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about to say for sure if we're there or not, but I can see it happening in the future where it may not even be a postcard anymore. It may just be the student saying, I'm interested. The federal government already has their information in 2 different systems. They combine the information, they send the information to the institution of interest, and the student gets the award notification.
Okay, I think that sounds good. Now, I'm going to play hostess for a minute. I'm going to tell our friends in the comments that if you want to ask a question and you don't want to sit in the seat, we absolutely understand it. It's always new and kind of nervousness. You can do \question on your keyboard, and you can sort of raise your hand. That puts question in it, and we're happy to answer any of your questions today. I think one of my goals for today is to walk away to help our families in the United States to find the best consumer information they can. What can they be doing right now? Where can they be looking to make sure that they're prepared so they don't miss deadlines, so they are informed, and so that we can be as transparent as possible? So what would be, before you answer that, I have a couple other, did you notice on the fact sheet, and Mark, this is geared towards you, they were talking about scholarship deadlines being changed to align with the new FAFSA. Any comment about that?
Well, there are some large scholarship programs that are partially based on financial need.
Right.
The largest of which is the Gates Millennium Scholarship Program.
Right.
And by having students file the FAFSA sooner, they may be able to push up their deadlines by a few months and get information to the students before their May 1st National Candidates Reply date, when they have to tell the schools where they're going. So if they can get the scholarships, and you've won the scholarship in advance of that date, that may influence the student's choice of where they're going to school.
Right. And what about, okay, we have a question, so I'm going to just read it. And since I don't have my glasses on, but I didn't think I needed them before this. Okay, the question is, I heard that some colleges are concerned about the stated completion rates on scorecards because they don't actually take into consideration transfers. Have you heard this, and can you discuss?
Okay. At most colleges, the number of transfer students is relatively small, but there are a handful of colleges that originally started as transfer institutions and gradually included freshmen that have a significant population of transfer students. And so it can lead to inaccurate information for those colleges. But for most colleges, it's just going to be pretty accurate. The other aspect of this is that there are community colleges where the students may not graduate with an associate's degree, but nevertheless they may transfer to a four-year institution, and those schools aren't necessarily getting credit for that student ultimately obtaining a bachelor's degree or satisfying the requirements for a two-year degree. So these schools are worried that this is going to cause people to think that their performance is worse than what it actually is.
That was her addition to that too. She's hearing that particularly affects community colleges. Yeah. So you're right on that for that. Transparency. Oh, one other question. The scorecard. So that's self-reported. The government is putting that information into those lists that I've seen published in the last week or so, right? Those 23 top. That's from the government, the Department of Ed, publishing that, right?
It's a combination of school-reported data and government data.
Okay.
In particular, the income data is coming from the U.S. Treasury.
Right.
And they're looking at who pays taxes, and they're linking up the individual and then combining that into aggregate data.
Okay, got it. So transparency, what can we get out today in the next 10, 15 minutes to let our, parents and students and families, where's the best place they can be looking? How can they stay on top of this? They're nervous. They're worried. This is a lot for them.
Well, they should keep in contact with their high school guidance counselor and college financial aid administrators. We have a blog called studentaidmatters.com where, as there are new developments, we'll put it out.
Okay.
We're planning on updating or filing the FAFSA book this year, and we'll have a special chapter about these upcoming developments in that book. And that book is available for free download from our website at advisors.com/FAFSA-book. And you can also buy it in paperback on Amazon, but you don't have to pay money to get this 250-page resource.
Right.
And just follow each of our Twitter handles, because I'm sure we'll be posting about it.
Exactly. Ben, what do you think you want to add for, transparency, the nervous parent that was calling this morning, like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And you had to break it to them. Oh my gosh, you're going to have 2 FAFSAs next year. What can you say where families can be looking to relieve the tension?
Yeah, I have to agree with Mark and asking us. We're trying hard to keep up with this, and it seems like there's something new. I mean, like this weekend, most of us woke up to the scorecard, I think on Saturday morning, and then the very next day we heard about PPY. So there's just lots of things happening, and we're trying to stay up with things. So keeping up with us is probably the first step in good information. I'll give another shout out to an organization that I represented for a while, NASFA. That's the National Association for Student Financial Aid Administrators. Really good people there. They stay up on everything. They're in Washington, D.C., so NASFA.org. And I say that because I was part of their task force for their web redevelopment team. So I think we put together a pretty good website there. So that's another good resource. But yeah, I think following us, keeping up with what's going on at the Chronicle of Higher Education and Inside Higher Ed, those people are really good at keeping up with what's going on. And then obviously just used.gov. Follow their Twitter handle, U.S. Department of Education. So they're really good at keeping people informed.
Yeah, I'm going to agree to everything that you guys are saying. I'm going to add financial aid offices. I mean, if you have any questions, especially if you're a continuing or a transfer student, please contact your financial aid office, see how this is going to maybe affect or not affect your particular situation, and always stay in contact with them so that they know what's going on in your family if you have any questions. And so let's go off topic a little bit. Just tell me before we end it, how'd you like your first blab? Ben?
I loved it.
Come on. What do you think about live streaming and blab and getting everyone over here? Easy?
I thought it was easy, and I appreciate you inviting me to participate. And I hope that the people who were there with us, listening and chatting, are able to walk away with some good information. Yeah,
me too. Mark?
Oh, and it's very much like a Google Hangouts that I participated in the past. It's nice to have this kind of interactivity. Yeah. By the way, there is one additional resource that I would recommend. The U.S. Department of Education sponsors a toll-free hotline called 1-800-4FED-AID, 1-800-4FED-AID, which is also 1-800-433-3243.
Okay.
And that is a toll-free number where you can call to ask questions about federal student aid as well as completing the FAFSA. So if you have any questions about the FAFSA, they're available during daytime hours and extended hours during prime FAFSA filing season.
Thank you very much. I want to ask you guys if we have another big news update or something, how about maybe we could plan between us and bring some other people on and really get it out to the families. Are you guys in? Are you up for another blab sometime a little bit when we have a little bit more information? Are you guys good?
Sure.
Okay. I'm up for it, yeah.
All right. Yeah, so let's wait and see how things unfold a little bit as we get into the season. I know I go to FSA. I think, Mark, you go to FSA. I don't know if you're going to FSA, Ben, but I think it might be interesting. Maybe we come back from FSA. I'm going to go to NACAC too, and at the end of the month, and you know, everything that we can do for parents to help them feel comfortable. I think that's what we want, right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
The FSA training conference is in Las Vegas, and I'm based in Las Vegas, so I will be there.
Oh, of course you will. All right. I just made my reservations. Go ahead, Ben. What were you saying?
The next time we do anything like this blab again, I think we need to introduce it with some background music of the Brady Bunch.
I know, isn't it funny?
Yeah, I can look up at you and.
I know. I mean, yes, it reminds me of the Brady Bunch, but I'm not sure how glued you guys are to CNN. I'm a little glued to CNN a little bit right now, especially. Yeah. So you see them sitting there, the four of them too, and I'm thinking, gosh, I wonder if they know about Blab, you know? Yeah. We're gonna see if Yolanda can pop in really quick before we sign off, and if she has any last. I know.
Bad day. The weather here just decided that it wanted to go really crazy while I was here, but you guys did such a great job with what you were doing.
And like I said, we'll do this again. And thank you guys for jumping in. I really appreciate it. We recorded it. We'll pass it around. Have a great day. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Just going to snap myself. I know. It's like, yay! How do I close out? I'm going to say bye. You are still on. I know. I just want to say bye.